The ego center and the spirit center. Verse number 36. The power of knowledge is endless. The end of all this can be marked as sameness and the other. Thus, in this way, there are two divisions. In this merging the other with sameness, one should remain awake to that clear state of being. Commentary. The word knowledge in the English language is used in a passive sense. So by translating ariv into knowledge, we minimize its meaning. The dynamic power implied in the word ariv is not in knowledge. When we hear the word knowledge, we think of some impression being presented to the mind as a state of awareness. But this is only one small aspect of the word we are translating here. We have already defined the self as that knowledge which shines by its own light and by which alone all our experiences are produced. When we say consciousness, we also imply the unconscious, which is the substratum of consciousness. In fact, consciousness is only a very fragmentary part of the general unconscious. Similarly, when we speak of ariv, we also mean that which is prior to a thing that is being known, what the state is in which it is known, in which direction it moves, the reason for such movement, what it can affect, how it can affect, what motivation arises, and what causes that motivation itself. All these implications are to be taken in one sweep to understand the word ariv. When we say infinite are the powers of knowledge, our reference is to the totality of existence. The word existence brings another limitation. From the first dawn of our search for knowledge, we are confronted by the limitation of language. As soon as we express a thing, that expression remains limited within the boundary of a concept. For the sake of communication, we attempt to express aspects of what can never be conceptualized by defining and presenting them in the form of concepts. The limitation of any one concept makes it necessary to amend it by bringing in more and more concepts. Henry Bergson describes this as the gold coin which you can never fully match, no matter how much copper change you have. You can go on shelling out pennies all day long, but you still have the feeling that there can never be adequate recompense for the gold coin. Let us start with the primary notions of knowledge. The very first knowledge and the consistent knowledge I have is what I term as I. There is no other knowledge more intimate, more clear, more consistent and thorough than knowing that I am. When I look into the content of what I call I, it's an awareness. When I say I know I am, what is the difference between the first I and the second? The first I seems to be undefined. When you say I know, the status of the I changes into a knower. You conceptually use the idea of knowing to understand I. The clear awareness that shines exactly where you have presupposed I is now identified with it. In fact, you recognize an awareness and you have now decided to call that awareness I. It took an act of knowing to arrive at that decision. Furthermore, there is an act of awareness as well as a state of awareness. The act of awareness is in knowing the state of awareness. It is somewhat difficult to differentiate between these two. Actually, the distinction is primarily a verbal one. I, the awareness of I, the state of being I, and the state of functioning as a knower are all various ways of putting the same thing. In substance, only one thing is happening. There is an awareness of an awareness of an awareness. It can continue ad infinitum. So much for the first part of the statement, I know. The second part is I am. A state of knowing and a state of being are combined into this second I, and you are underlining its beingness by saying I am. It is an existential statement. Just what is it that pervades the whole through all the different states implied in it? There is no real difference between being, knowing, and inquiring. When you say, who am I am so and so, you are making a presentation and a judgment. The judgment brings you a comfortable feeling that you have solved the problem. One's consciousness remains always the same, over and above all differences and distinctions. For convenience, we call this transcendence. Within that transcendence, we have established existence. Philosophers like Husserl, Heidegger, and Jaspers saw these two aspects as inseparable, yet different. They felt the need to speak of both. Kant made a general distinction between pure reason and practical reason. Transcendence is a major factor in pure reason, while practical reason has to touch the empirical level at every point. It is impossible for me to see you unless I consider myself to be one person and you as another. I must become the subject and you are put in the category of the object. Seeing means I direct my eyesight towards you, and I specify your form, your color, and your distinction from others. I also have to separate you from your background. Thus, a number of empirical differentiations are to be made for me to know you. I not only decide that you are, but I also decide that you are not anything other than you. To arrive at this, I use a process of elimination. I eliminate the other from you. Even in a simple item of knowledge, there are many differentiations. Still, we don't feel that it is a complicated task to know things. Knowing is so simple. It only becomes difficult when I describe it. We look at the world and we immediately know it is there. We have no problem with it. Berkeley says that philosophers kick up dust and then complain of clouded vision. It is only because of the dust they have raised that they cannot see clearly. Scientists do something similar. They look at a flower and are curious to know how one flower differs from another. They are never satisfied until they give the flower a family name. In order to do all this, they tear the flower open and take it apart. They compare the ovary, pistil, and petals with those of other flowers. Only then can they classify and categorize it. And what have they added to knowledge by doing this? But their curiosity is not satisfied unless they know all these things. So we have taken upon ourselves the task of analyzing everything. Does it have any value? It is only useful when we have to apply something at an empirical level. We started this discussion with the primary notion of I. I know I am. The second thing is I am experiencing the world. This implies a major division. I am the subject and the world is the object. In the Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, the knower is called Kshetrajna, the knower of the field. This is taken as a major principle for understanding our own self as the knower of everything, and the non-self as the field of that knowledge. This kind of usage can also be seen in the language of existential psychologists, who talk about the ego and its boundary. The ego boundary can be expanded or contracted. For instance, I sit here and look at one of you. I say to myself, he's a very friendly person. I love him. I include him easily within my boundary as someone safe. Then I notice another person and think, that man is a stranger. I don't know what he thinks of me. I'll bring my boundary inward a little so that he will be just outside the fence. So the ego boundary is not fixed. We are constantly adjusting it. It can be expanded or contracted, inclusive or exclusive. This ego boundary is not the same as the difference between the self as a knower and its field of knowledge, however. Everything coming within the ambit of knowledge is part of the field. It is in no way limited by the idea of mine and not mine, my lover and my enemy, what is strange, and even what I don't know are all within it. Now let's go a step further. Can we imagine the existence of anything without knowing it? If I say I don't know Brezhnev or I have never seen Mao Zedong, I am speaking of my ignorance of two people. For me to do this, I have to postulate in my mind what I am ignorant of. So even ignorance is the knowledge of what we call ignorance. I only know my knowledge is a very misleading statement. I am again using the word knowledge in a passive way. What is the I but knowledge? It is knowledge knowing knowledge. It is knowledge that says, I do not know. When we are seeking knowledge and finding it, who is it who seeks it? And just where does the seeker get knowledge from? These are really mysterious things. You presume that you do not know when you seek, and yet you seek in a certain direction. How do you decide this is the direction you have to move? Who motivates you, moves you? What intuition comes to you to say that there is a knowledge to be sought and found? Look at the millions of inventions we have made to make life so very comfortable. Look at all the technical devices, the artifacts. All these have sprung up from nowhere. They are all the creations of knowledge. Knowledge can be just passive consciousness, a desire, a dynamic that makes you restless until you get up and seek and find and realize. Knowledge is a zest, a compulsion, a perseverance. It is the joy of recognition. It is fulfillment, accomplishment, effort. The whole of life and everything happening in it is nothing but that knowledge. Knowledge is dynamic. Not one moment passes without the movement and transformation of it. And what transforms? There must be a substance that transforms. This substance cannot come from a fresh supply somewhere, since it already represents totality. A fresh supply would imply that it originated from somewhere and that it had been originated by something and that it gets expended somewhere else. It is not like that. Physicists decided to say there is a conservation and a transformation of matter. The total mass is the same, yet within it many changes are taking place. A changes into B, B changes into C, and C changes back into A again. But on the whole, it is the same. Indian philosophers consider the total substance the same as the conservation of matter. Within the total substance are countless possibilities for transformation. We have to live both these aspects. I have to get up from my bed, look in the book, and find the verse we will meditate on today. Then I read it, examine each letter separately, combining those letters into words and the words into sentences. I look into the logical structure of the sentence and get the meaning of it. All these are empirical activities, and I cannot neglect any of them in preparing for the class. I come and sit here, I recognize all of you and understand the situation of why I am here, why you are here, and what is expected of me. All these are again simple empirical matters. irrespective of the great wisdom to which it may belong. There is action going on. I have to articulate meaningful things, and you have to listen and make meaning out of them by pondering over them. So we are all engaged in activities all the time. All these activities are happening with one consciousness. We are always moving, shifting, and changing our attention from the particular to the universal, and from the universal back to the particular. The universal aspect is here called sama, sameness, and the particular aspect is called anya, the other. As you can see, sama is etymologically related to same and anya to another. There is a likelihood of our making the mistake of getting caught in the particular. When this happens, we stand always divided, treating me as sama and you as anya, and finding no way to come together in a common interest. The other possibility is to clasp our hands and sit together in silence, sharing the feeling of wonder. Then we forget that there are many. We also forget this I. Then there comes a great peace, a great serenity, a joy that is not a form of excitement. In that joy, everything merges, at least for some time. There is no other. We need this very deeply. When we read the Bible, we always see Jesus walking away from the multitude. He goes to the mountain, or he sits alone on the shores of Galilee. There he is one with the sea, the sky, the clouds, all of nature. It is as if he does not exist. We can imagine that serene moonlit night, gentle waves with silver crests, musical rumblings of the ocean, and a lonely man sitting there, looking into the vacant sky and feeling oneness with all. Even that very thought brings so much peace. Then we see him again with the multitude. There is a need to heal people who are sick. There is a blind man who wants to see, a leper who wants to be cured, an unclean woman who wants to become clean and whole again. There are necessities and political controversies. There are people spitting on the face, reproaching. There is a trial, a heavy cross to be borne, the stark reality of a nail being struck, blood coming. All this in the life of one person. Then it is as if it was all a dream, like the passing of a nightmare or a sweet dream. It is all done with. It is all just phenomenality. Yet within that phenomenality, there is a noumenon, a continuous breathing pulsation of reality. The unreal shadows are created by the real light. If you are contemplative, there comes an attitude of transcendence, even in the thick of life. Perhaps someone is getting into a heated argument with you, trying to start a fight. It can be any activity, really, an encounter or a joyous relationship also. The empirical reality of the situation, which you term necessity, is very clear to you. You willingly offer yourself to play the game. In any case, a person of little wisdom forgets himself when he is fighting or relating positively. But for someone who is established in contemplative discipline, there is an overriding resonance of an enveloping knowledge which assures him of the general condition that is both the ground and the total environment of the specific game going on. Because of this, inwardly there is detachment, and outwardly there is conformity to the demands of the situation. Yet there is no hypocrisy involved. You are not pretentious in your game, and at the same time you are not affected by it in the way of a person who is fully infatuated with a situation. When sama and anya, sameness and the other, interrelate in this harmonious way, it brings the quality of the highest kind of inner peace and calm to our life. When life is so protected with an integrated wisdom, there is no dissipation of your energy. It is all conserved. It is hard to even comprehend this state unless you are already established in it. But I assure you, it can be attained. You can do this. You can be what you are, going on with your games of life, and yet be detached from it. Deep within you is that aloneness, which is not of the individual. It is the aloneness of the universal, the aloneness of God, the aloneness of substance, the aloneness of the real. Nothing happens to it. By retaining that aloneness, you can be the many. When you touch, there is all the gentleness and care of the touch. But you are also not touching, because you know the beingness in which the touch and the touched are the same. The necessity to touch comes to assure you that you are already one. When you kiss, when you embrace, the urge comes because of a seeming forgetfulness, saying, "Oh, what made us two? We are not two, we are the same." It is as if your true beingness is broken into bits and pieces by the empirical nature of your sensory motor functions and changing transactional situations. Again and again, beingness has to assert itself. It operates as a great love, a great caring, a great sharing, a feeling of wonder, going back into serenity and re-establishing yourself in peace. A garland is made up of a number of flowers and thread. We can appreciate and enjoy each flower separately. As we examine the color, smell, texture, and softness of each one, we forget about the garland. If we treat it as a whole garland, the flowers blend together and lose their individual identities. It is also possible to think of it as both flowers and garland. This is the integrated vision. Narayana Guru is not asking us to run away from the particular to the universal, but to transcend the duality and live and accept both these games together. Then we will be living in our beingness and also allowing every little aspect of becoming to come to pass. In an earlier, very beautiful verse, the Guru said that knowledge, in order to see what it could be, becomes all this. That is verse 33. This is what we are doing all the time. We don't relish eating the same food every day. The elements may be the same, flour, sugar, rice, vegetables, but we make a new composition and serve it in a new way each time. So a new aspect of knowledge is revealed by the specific expression as it unfolds. It is placed as part of the universal, and the universal lives on through the particular we enjoy. Although some have interpreted it this way, we are not advocating the negation of life and the running away from it. We do not say any of the luxuries of life are stumbling blocks to realization. Nothing is to be thrown away. Rather, everything is to be seen with a new attitude. That new attitude is the old attitude that you know everything is one. It is a very joyous way of accepting life and a wonderful way of living it richly and beautifully. And the free translation of verse 36 is as follows. Innumerable are the powers of knowledge. They can be mainly categorized as two, sameness and the other. One should awaken to the clarity of vision, in which all forms of otherness merge and become one with sameness.